and a second by Mrs. Waters. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Okay, we have one main agenda topic tonight, which is discussion of the fall reopening plans. Recognizing that the district submitted their plans to RIDE on Friday, and the guidance request from RIDE is not to publicly share the plans until they have given feedback on those plans. So by the end of July 31st, I think they're supposed to provide that feedback. And once they've provided the feedback, then we will be able to post them publicly and have more communications about that. But we wanted to start the discussion now. And we know that a tremendous amount of work went into developing these plans with lots of scenarios and options and more details than probably anyone could imagine. So we did want to take this opportunity for the administration to share, discuss any of the key topics they'd like to related to the fall reopening plans.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I just to build on what you just said, and thank you for mentioning that about RIDE's request to, not make the reopening plans public until we got feedback. Clearly other districts have done that. And when other districts do things that they've been asked not to do, it really makes it difficult for those rule followers. So I just, and for all of the, folks in the audience, to be sure, because I wanted to make sure that we're doing the right thing, I called RIDE yesterday. I spoke to Deputy Commissioner Anna Riley. I don't know if it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Just to be sure that we were doing the right thing, given the fact that other districts were making their plans public. And she supported that point, that we superintendents were asked to hold off on making their plans public until we got feedback. So thank you for mentioning that. And I just wanted to emphasize that point, because it puts us in a tough spot when other districts are seeing their plans posted, and our students, staff, and families don't have that opportunity. So we'll get it out as soon as we get that feedback. So I just wanted to emphasize that particular point. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So with that being said, Madam Chair, Bob and I had some discussions around our approach this evening. And we thought that we would have an open discussion around the 7 options that we presented to RIDE. And I was going to just briefly talk about what those 7 options are, and then certainly open the forum up to questions and how we've approached things. Just to give you, before I do that, to give you a systemic approach on how we thought we'd go about this process. One thing that I think sets us up for success in this predicament, if there's any semblance of success in this predicament, is that we had asked principals to create their own plans for their own buildings as an offshoot connected to the district plan. And their preparation has been instrumental, because as the district has to adapt and change based on what RIDE asks us to do, the buildings have pre-prepared for those things already. The building principals have been working really, really hard on this plan. I asked them to do a lot, and they have delivered, so I can't thank them enough. And there have been many people who have contributed to this. Rachel, all the central office, Alex, Bob, Mike, everybody has been involved, Katie, and we've put in a tremendous amount of work. So hopefully you like what we share this evening, okay?
Okay, yeah, and just as a reminder, when we met, the last time we met on May 26th, you presented some preliminary options. It was based on the CDC guidelines before we had anything from RIDE about what we should do. And, the 3 options you had presented then was the 100% in person, 100% virtual, and then the hybrid model. Of course, that was based on, your best knowledge at the moment. So now Here
It
we
wasn't
are.
that far off. It wasn't
Yeah,
that far
no,
off.
no.
So the first option that when Bob started, talking about what RIDE was asking us to do was full implementation. We all know, we've heard the governor say full implementation has been the goal. So the first task for everybody was at all the buildings to do a complete overhaul of everything you can possibly imagine in terms of operations. And when we asked the principals to create their plans, we gave them 4 specific categories to look at, and governance and how operations work in their buildings was one of the major pieces of that. And linked to our main plan are all the buildings plans around those things. So there was a tremendous amount of work that had to be done for buildings, from looking at their classroom sizes to the amount of desks to the spacing, all of those things. So that full in-person implementation plan, we have plans for that across each of our schools. We can have the principals talk a little bit about that as we dive in a little bit deeper. The second version, or the second option that we went into, which RIDE called the partial implementation plan. I looked at that in 2 different categories. I actually broke the partial into 2 different categories. The way that RIDE defined it was, or the way that we interpreted the language, was that partial meant that pre-K to 8 would operate as they normally would in a full implementation plan, meaning all kids in school, but that the high school 9 through 12 would operate in a hybrid 50-50 AB schedule. Any one of those definitions to me means the same thing. A hybrid is part in school, part out, 50-50, 50% in school, 50% out. They all say the same thing, AB schedule, okay? So anytime terminology-wise we use those, we're using them all the same way. The second version of that partial plan would mean that the elementary school, pre-K to 5, would be in school full person. Again, connecting that to the governor's stance that elementary students, she wants them in school, K to 5, full in person. So we needed to create plans for that and maintain that at the elementary level, while 6 through 12 would be considered the partial 50-50 in school and out. That was another version that we had to look at as a district. Another option was, again, requirement from RIDE, was the limited version, which by its term means that we have a limited population of students in the buildings. And the way that they described it is perhaps there's a widespread community spread and there's a need for major concern. So they would have to pull out at least 75% of the population into virtual and distance learning, and 25% of the population, I called it 25 to 35 because different buildings at-risk populations vary. So principals prepared for that variance. And vulnerable populations can include, students in specialized programs, ELL students, resource students, students that require intervention, and anything there in between. The fifth option is our full distance learning plan, which we already had in place, and we made a lot of, I think, good headway this past year, having to turn over in a week's time into a full distance learning mode. So we had that plan already designed and tailored for in the event that we have to go in that direction. The virtual academy design, which I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about in a little bit, Rachel is has volunteered kindly to do that for me. She's going to talk about the virtual academy. She spent a tremendous amount of time working on it, and we've been discussing this for a while. So she'll give the details on that. And then the seventh option is having to go pre-K to 12 in a 50-50 or AB version for the entire district in the event that conditions call for that. And I feel like the superintendent would need to have flexibility to be able to do that in the event that full in-person at the elementary level is not possible. We still need to be able to figure out plans on what it would look like 50-50 for them, even though the state really didn't call for plans in that arena. I do want to mention one little side note that those are the main umbrella 7 options. Under the partial options, where you have some, either the secondary and or elementary and or both, in some way, shape, or form in a partial in school and out, there are a myriad of scheduling ways to do that. There's so many ways to do it that the actual sub branches of those can get very complex. I'll give you one example. One example could be an isolated every Monday is a virtual day for everybody. Tuesday, Wednesday would be group A for half of the population, A through M in any said school. And then Thursday, Friday would be group B, N through Z. Again, for any said population in any school, half of that population. And that would be a fixed schedule for parents, fixed in the schools. And we've had many discussions about other options around those schedules. So that is about as simplistic an overview as I can give for months of work.
Okay, so do we go into questions now, or?
Yeah, so what I think is, now that you know what the 7 are, we can either do questions, or we can have Rachel do a brief description of the virtual academy first and then go into the questions.
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay, so we have developed a virtual academy, and the reason being is that we want to make sure that if parents are not comfortable in sending their kids to school, which from the survey seemed to be the truth for many families, that we have an alternate option where the district is providing virtual content, but it's still not in a direct instruction way where the students are working on independently, but they're able to access curriculum that we have reviewed. We are in control of, or looking at the data, I think is what I want to say. So it's really to provide online academic platform. We are looking at providing a teacher that will support. We still have to work out some of the details because it's just dependent on what plan we're coming back to school with and how many teachers are able to return into the classroom. The three core things that we're looking for, the 3 scenarios that we're seeing, is a family chooses at the beginning of the school year to be completely virtual for the entire school year. They're not planning on sending their kid this year. It's just not going to happen. So that's a student that we would enroll in virtual academy. But another option would be if a student is absent, whether it's for quarantine, the COVID-19, long-term illness, and we're looking at students that are out for more than 20 school days. These are students that also could be hospitalized, things along those lines. Building administrators will decide to what degree a student will continue to engage in the classroom curriculum, or whether they will be placed in the virtual academy for the length of their absence. And I will explain to you how the curriculum works in a minute to show that you actually can have a combination of those 2 things. The reason why we chose more than 20 school days is that aligns with our homebound tutoring policy. And the third option is a student has an individually designed program developed for them by their educational team. That's not just special ed, that could be a student with a 504 plan or any other educational plan that needs to be created for a student. We're looking at attendance, where the parents, we're still developing the whole procedure, but the parents will submit grades and attendance records for each trimester. We're trying to provide this as an option. If a parent were to choose to homeschool their student, they wouldn't receive any of what I'm going to tell you that they're going to receive. When a parent or a family decides to homeschool, they're completely on their own. They have to have their own curriculum. They have to pay for their own materials, they have to have their own Chromebooks and all those things. With this, they would get the curriculum, which I'll go through in a minute, as well as a district Chromebook, and if necessary, options for Wi-Fi connection. So it's an advantage over being homeschooled. In preschool, kindergarten, and 1st grade, students would be assigned to Tier 1, which is that general curriculum of IXL, English and Language Arts, English Language Arts and math skills. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, we would be assigned to ELA, English Language Arts, Math, Science, and Social Studies, and IXL skills. middle school and high school and transition students. So again, those are the students that are 18 to 22, because yes, we will still be servicing those students, will be assigned to Edgenuity coursework, which is another online platform. The coursework options are determined by the guidance, academic staff, content leaders, and the building administrators. So I know that the middle school and high school have worked on those components. Students who require or are eligible for tier 2 or tier 3 interventions in kindergarten through 5th grade are assigned to additional specific IXL content aligned to the deficit area. We're able to look at where their skills are. It's a type of a program that can increase skills when it becomes too easy for a student, or to decrease when it becomes too hard. We're able to look at that data and then align it to what specific skills they need to work on. For that same tier 2, tier 3 interventions for middle school, we're going to use Edgenuity's MyPath, which is another intervention system where it takes their STAR data and is able to take the STAR data and align them to what specific content they need to work on. This is separate from the Edgenuity coursework. Edgenuity is set up as courses versus skills, where the elementary IXL is set up by skills. So to give you the bigger picture, IXL would be for all the elementary, preschool through fifth grade. Then when we get into middle school and high school, we're using Edgenuity. Middle school intervention would be the MyPath. We do have a document that outlines these components. We do have links to what the curriculum looks like. IXL research regarding it is approved to receive Title II funding, which is nice and very helpful. We have a plethora of courses. We're able to have students even participate in the Edgenuity coursework in elective coursework too. So we think this gives a very nice, well-rounded skill set of curriculum. It's not the same as being in the classroom. It doesn't replace Google Meets for those students who are doing distance learning, but it does provide really good skill building.
Okay, I'm sure there are some questions about this. I'll start off with an easy one. How do you spell IXL? Is it IXL?
IXL.
Okay.
And the website's really easy, IXL.com.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Good.
Yeah. It's well known. It's well used in Rhode Island. It's well researched.
Okay. Mr. Collins.
Madam Chair.
Dr. Sant, go ahead, Anthony.
I was just going to preface, I'm sorry, Mr. Collins. I just wanted to say that all of these plans, I think it's important for us to preface that at the end of this 33-page document, we put in a disclaimer to the Department of Ed that there are two major variables that play a role in ultimately what plan the district goes with for our students. And those two variables are still working out the budget variables as it pertains to each of those different plans and what that impact is, because the superintendent's balanced budget that was passed by the school committee in the town was one thing, but COVID has knocked us back into a deficit of sorts. So the bottom line is we put that disclaimer in there, and then the second is impact bargaining. So the other contingency is the superintendent, director of human resources, along with Alex, they need to have meetings with the union to discuss what the plans are. And to my knowledge, that has not happened just yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Bob, am I accurate in saying that?
We have, we've had some meetings. We actually have a meeting, Mr. Collins, Mrs. Duncanson, Mr. Prignano, and I have a meeting with the union on Thursday afternoon. So we have had some preliminary meetings, and in the meeting that we had, we were in agreement that we had to make some decisions around, for example, the calendar, right? And how we're going to use, by executive order, the governor created this statewide calendar, which was 180 days. Contractually, our teachers, our certified staff works 185 days. So we need to work together to decide how we're going to utilize those 5 additional days. So that'll be one, for example, one of the big things that we discuss on Thursday.
Mind if I go ahead? Doc, Mr. Mitchell, while we're on the subject, do you know if the, well, I guess since the preliminary plans are being released right now, but have you had any discussions about the union or any of the administrators, doesn't have to be the union, polling teachers over what their preferences are, or if there's been any sort of focus groups over concern? I know in my district we've had, over the last couple of weeks, we've had, or Mrs. Duncanson?
Go ahead, Katie.
So I did send out a survey about 3 weeks ago, I think. And I think I'm going to send out another one soon because every week it changes, I think. There was probably about 45% of teachers showed some concern about coming back. Only a couple indicated that they could not come back. But I know that some communications are trickling in about that. So we are, checking the temperature of our staff in that respect, and we're also in constant communication with the union.
No pun intended,
well.
Checking temperature.
I know.
Well, and I think also opinions can kind of, as public health conditions change as well. So that's why it's kind of hard. And I know a lot of this isn't going to be approved for a few weeks, and then even then, I'm skeptical because I'm still skeptical of the public health crisis. But I'm not skeptical of it existing. Just concerned that it's not over until we have a vaccine.
I think as a central office team, we've, our opinion has changed in the last couple of weeks as well. Like our feelings on the feasibility of some of the plans, not necessarily this plan, but of things out of our control, will really have a big impact on our ability to come back, like testing and things like that.
My original question was for Dr. Santa, though. You mentioned the virtual academy, and it sounds great, but I understand. I think we had the discussion last week about this. About virtual academy isn't just a drop-in service. You want people committed from the get-go to make it feasible. Now, you had mentioned at the beginning you want parents. In the scenario you gave was when parents commit to it at the beginning and do the whole year virtual learning. But if hopefully, God willing, public health, there's a vaccine, say, parents can rescind that and actually send their kids back if they feel comfortable.
Yeah. And what I didn't mention is that IXL content, those skills, and as well as Edgenuity are going to be available to all teachers all the time. So it is possible that, let's say, God forbid, we're out of school again, they could use IXL as well as Edgenuity to augment their lessons. And that means then if a student is out for a prolonged time, they could also be assigned that. There's a lot of different ways. It gives us a lot of flexibility in how we work on those skills. And we're really concerned about making sure that the tier 2 students, the students that don't really or in their skills to begin with, and want to make sure that they're continuing to grow. So this also gives us that data, because we'll have the data from when they begin and from when they end, whether they're in the virtual academy or they're in the regular classroom. But when we're talking about for students who are going to be in the virtual academy, they're going to get the full English, math, science, and social studies from 2nd grade on, but everyone has access to English and math, ELA and math. That's what I'm saying. It can kind of be created. It can create a plan. So let's say I'm a 3rd grade teacher and we're in school 100%, and then we have to go to distance learning. Well, while they're in school or when they're in distance learning, I could have them still working on the IXL skills. And then when they're out, they can continue on with those skills. So it adds another pretty robust and intuitive curriculum for teachers to use at their disposal.
I want to just thank you, Rachel. I want to drive home a few points of logistics. One is that the virtual academy is not a full go at this point. We still don't know how we would staff the virtual academy. And if Katie wants to comment on that, it's up to her. But basically we have some work to do around how we would staff a virtual academy. Number 2, it is not a direct instructional model, meaning it's not teachers posting Google Classroom lessons for them to access those platforms and do work on them. It's an independent study. We do not have the capacity to basically manage and monitor 2 parallel school systems. It's merely an option at this point for us to help families out that under these conditions want other options. The other piece is when you reference the attendance, the reason why we wanted to, if you designate to be part of the virtual academy you're in, is because we can't have 700-800 families coming in and out of, it would create chaos for us, having an influx of in and out into a virtual academy type of circumstance. So we needed to sort of create some criteria and some boundaries around how we approach it. I just wanted to put those few things out there. And
Mr. Damana, is there there's a budgetary implication to this as well?
A major one on the staffing end. On the we think we have the licensure and quotes to provide the actual access to the platforms figured out for our students in the district. We have that covered. The staffing is what is obviously the big expense. So we have to really take a look at that.
So the licensing is can be accommodated within our existing budget. I mean, I know there's lots of variables.
Not existing, but there are monies that we're receiving through CARES Act or ESSER. You may have heard of ESSER funds that I need to apply for officially.
Yeah.
But there are monies that are available to us through that stream that we're able to allocate for those licenses.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Madam Chair, I also think it's important to know, I do think it's important to state this, and that is we have some really, I think, skilled negotiators when it comes to getting these companies to reduce price. Rachel, outstanding. Deb Rude, highly skilled at that.
I've heard of her before, Deb Rude, doing some of this negotiating.
Joyce Bonner, our purchasing person. They really are, I think, highly skilled at getting these businesses to reduce their price. So I think it's important for taxpayers to know that, people are working really hard to save the district money. I also want to state one other really important thing, and that is, and I'm sure, Madam Chair, and members of the school committee, I don't know if you're receiving the same number of emails that I am regarding the start of the school year. I don't know that it's 50-50, but it really is interesting how, I guess, like the country, people are responding at like opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So you have parents who are understandably really concerned about sending their children to school. Some parents have stated that they're not going to send their child to school until there's a vaccine. We know that, and then I've also received emails from parents who are adamant about their children returning to school for lots of reasons, right? And one is the socialization. I think we would all agree that it would be more advantageous for a child to be sitting in a classroom with their teacher in front of them. That's what we want. But so we have a real balancing act here to address, because people are all over the place, and which has already been mentioned. I mean, we know that we also have some adults who are concerned about returning as well. So, all of these things will factor into the final decision. And I think it's important for everybody to know, if it hasn't been stated already, and even if it has, it's worth repeating, that the state is going to make a decision on which option we are expected to implement on August 17th. So that doesn't give us a whole lot of time to adjust. So as everyone can imagine, based on what we've discussed this evening, there's still a lot of work to do, like planning around, delivering the virtual academy. That is going to require a lot more. It's been a busy summer and will be, right up until the start of school.
So, Mr. Mitchell, that it seems the state has flip-flopped a little bit on that, because my understanding was in the beginning that the state would allow each district to make their decision about how they would reopen with guidance from the state. But and I've heard this, is this really true that is the state making a final decision? Is RIDE making a final decision for every district in the state to
Well-
follow the same model?
Well, that is what we've heard. And, you know, as you know, Madam Chair, we have meetings every Tuesday and Thursday as a superintendent organization. And in many of those meetings, there is a representative from the Department of Ed, and the governor has been to 2 meetings. We're hoping, the organization is hoping that she will be able to attend another meeting soon. If not the governor, then someone from her office will be present. But that, I think, is a really important question. So I'll make sure that you know, that answer, the answer to that question is crystal clear. That is really important, and I will make sure to follow up on that.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions on the virtual academy option and also related to homeschooling. I think these are options that parents are seriously considering right now. If they don't want to send their child to school, they're going to want to know what the virtual academy means, and they're going to want to know what's the difference between virtual academy and homeschooling. And I know, Rachel, you said that, you know, if a parent chooses to homeschool, they're doing that on their own. They are, you know, securing their curriculum, getting their materials, getting their own Chromebooks if they need them, whatever they need, they do that entirely on their own. And is there a deadline for people to tell the district if they're going to homeschool?
So Mike sent out or is sending out a survey. Mike, did that go out today?
Yeah, the survey went out. We've got a number of applicants. The ones that had made that mention in the last survey that they were going to keep their children home, the majority of are still sticking with that.
And originally it was 257 families that designated that they were not going to be sending their children back in the fall.
Right. So hopefully within the next couple of days, we'll have the final survey results broken down by elementary, middle school, and high school. And then I'll have those available for you.
And then will you be sending that same survey out to everyone, others that may have changed their mind from the first time they answered?
So Tony and I were having that discussion along with Bob, looking at the first round of surveys that went out, and within 2 weeks, people had changed their mind already. So we wanted to see the definite no's first, and then we're looking at our other options to send something out again to see what they're feeling with a couple other questions in there.
Okay. Yeah, and I think in order for parents to make that decision, they really do need to understand what the virtual academy is and how that will operate. And again, the difference between that and homeschooling. So for the virtual academy at the high school level, I guess middle and high, as you look at the Edgenuity, assuming that all of that coursework is all credit based and meets the requirements what they would need. So they're not losing anything at the high school level by doing that.
The high school already uses Edgenuity for course remediation and students that are doing coursework. This would be just a more extensive use and they would get guidance on what classes to participate in. And the same for the middle school, if that's what we choose to do. Yeah.
Jay and Beth at the middle school level will be, and their teams will be selecting the coursework, pre-selecting the coursework for the students. And the same with the high school team. Adolfo and his team will pre-select the courses that basically the scope and sequence of what they would need to take depending on their grade level. So we're going to predetermine that.
Okay. And we don't currently use IXL.
No.
Okay.
We did a pilot a few years ago and it was well received. But I believe we weren't able to sustain it. The pilot was able to be done for free. IXL has been very generous to us. They are giving us they originally only a 15% discount, but I negotiated down to 18% discount on the whole program, as well as they're going to provide us the social studies and science curriculum for the kids, only the kids in the virtual academy. So about that 250 or so students for free, which I think is at least for this year. So that's nice.
Okay,
and then we're working on, and all these come with some PD and options that we could look at for using some of those virtual PD days and things like that.
Okay. All right. Mr. Collins?
Dr. Santa, do any of these plans favor, or have you considered, I'm sure you've considered this, but which plan, well, I would imagine going full tilt, but somewhere in the middle between the full distance learning and the full middle, which is more conducive to mental health, particularly with kids at the K through 5 level, who are going to have trouble transitioning back into school. They're not, I don't imagine, I don't think any teacher would disagree that these kids who have been on their own essentially for 4 months or 6 months when it's all told are going to be able to go right back in the classroom like day one all over again. Is there going to be a transition if there's any sort of in-person instruction or orientation built in?
I think we still have to work those components out from a mental health point of view. Typically for kids, it's better just to get back into the routine, right? To go right back to the routine for most kids. I will tell you, I have had multiple students who have done much better on distance learning because they haven't had the same level of social impact. And it has been actually very beneficial for them. So I suspect those students coming back in, it's going to be harder for them. And I think it's going to be adjustment for everyone. I think it's going to be adjustment for teachers too, of having a classroom full of kids that are 3.5 feet apart that need to have to wash their hands every, feels like 2 minutes, 2 minutes. So I think it's gonna be a huge adjustment, but what we know about students and children is it's much better just to go full immersion and come right back. I am concerned about the in and out and the lack of clarity. I don't think I'm not blaming the state. I think we're still in flux and we do have to rely on what the Department of Health says, but I think it's concerning that we don't really know. And I feel very bad for families because how can you plan for the fall when you're not really sure what's going to happen, right? You don't know. If you knew right from the get-go it was going to be all virtual, easy, I might not like it, but I'm going to plan for it. If I know it's going to be 100%, I can plan for that, but I can't, it's really hard to plan for, we may be 100% for 3 weeks and then have to be out again for 2 months. Those things I think are very, very hard on our families. And when families are stressed, that impacts our students. So that's where my concern lies more than transitioning them back into 100% school. The kids will come around, they'll learn the routines. Yeah, there are going to be some outlier kids are going to have difficulty, but in general, they're going to follow right through the routine and be happy to be back in school. Hopefully I answered your question.
I know, Mr. Damana, that I think with all of these options, you've also done some in-depth budgetary exploration.
Yes.
And if we look at these options, look at full in person as an example. Do you have a sense of the magnitude of the budget implication that would be to bring the whole district back in person, both from, to meet the CDC guidelines?
Well, what I did was I tried to break down the costs into categories. And then once I broke those general costs down, we did a few things. We provided those numbers to Mr. Prignano. And then number two, there's something else that went on synonymously with me kind of gathering some information from the bus company, cleaning supplies, staffing, among other things. We asked the principals to generate a list of 4 to 5 major criteria that is impacting their schools based on, a full implementation model, albeit desks, additional staffing they may need for duties because they're anticipating that buses may take a while to unload or multiple unloading points in the buildings. So things like that. And what we did was we had them populate a sheet and then Alex tied some numbers to it. And then he put those general numbers together. As far as busing is concerned, I believe our typical number for budgeting under normal circumstances is about $2.5 million. In a full in-person model with the guidelines as we anticipate them to be, with 40 students to a bus, we're looking at an increase of $200,000 just in busing over and above Bob's budget. And that doesn't include any staffing, anything for our virtual academy. Cleaning costs right now in a full in-person. I think he's got it around $400,000. So you got 600,000 right there. Substitute costs, which Katie can talk about. We estimated the total somewhere between when Bob wrote his letter to RIDE, he estimated them anywhere between $2 and $3 million over budget. All in.
For the in-person.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just
Mr. Mitchell?
just very quickly, and we've all heard the concern, this concern over and over and over again. We've discussed it over and over again in our superintendent's meetings, and no one has an answer for the transportation issue. We've been told on several occasions that guidance on transportation will be coming. We expected that it would have been shared a couple of weeks ago, but nothing definitive has been provided by, and I wouldn't want to be in a position to make that decision, but the transportation issue has not been resolved yet. So even if we wanted to get 100% of everybody back, I don't know that it is right now with CDC guidelines humanly possible to do that, even if we had the money. So we're anxiously waiting for some guidance, and we're approaching the end of July. So, people are anxious about that particular issue, understandably.
The plan has all of those numbers in each of the sections of the plan. I put the PowerPoints, the access sheets, so everyone would be able to view transparently all of the numbers that we accumulated. Alex did a summary for us for RIDE, and it is right now missing that full summary sheet because the latest numbers, he just recently received the principal's request for desks or whatever it may be that they're missing to do a full in-person model. So once we get that, we'll add that to the plan as well. It's also good to note that in the principal's plans, which are linked to the main plan, we asked them to do flow maps of traffic flow, inside, outside, classroom models, and they really did a great job. I'm receiving a few texts from them now. They would be open to sharing some logistics with you guys if you want some information from the elementary, generally speaking, middle school, and I'm not sure if anyone from the high school is here, but we have representation from at least K to 8.
Mr. Collins?
I have a question. How much professional development? I mean, this time of year, you usually are planning your professional development for August, but how much professional development does each plan need? Virtual learning, even though the teachers had 3 months under the belt, they probably still need more training. But will they need a day? Will they need 2 just to figure out the logistics at the high school, the flow patterns that you speak of? Is that something you considered, or is that just too far away before you can even start planning for that?
I'll have Bob answer that. He's raising his hand.
Yeah, and certainly anyone else on the leadership team, please jump in. So we know that we have 8 professional development days built into the governor's executive order state calendar. So there's quite a few professional development days there. I think your point is well taken, Mr. Collins, that there needs to be, an opportunity for us to have some professional development with staff before the school year starts, regardless of the plan that we will be implementing as a district. So as I mentioned, we have those 5 days, and that will be a part of the conversation that we have with the union. I'm sure that what we know at the very least, we're going to need some time to get everyone oriented. So we know we're going to need an orientation day, but, we have those days, and, we have some ideas about, as we've discussed in our meetings, some ideas about how we would use that time, but that is certainly a consideration.
So 3 out of the 7 options have pre-K through 5 being in person full-time. That's right?
That's correct.
And
That's based on the governor's statements about being steadfast around elementary being in school.
right. And then, the other two options are distance learning and the virtual academy. And then we have an option of everybody being hybrid, everybody being 50-50. And then of course, everybody, being in person. So it seems, and we don't know this yet, of course, the state may say that all K through 5, pre-K through 5 needs to be in person full-time. Could be a likely scenario based on what the governor's been saying.
Correct.
So I think, Mr. Demano, you just offered up that if a, elementary school principal wants to comment on the opportunities and the challenges around how do you bring an elementary school back in person full-time, I think this would be a great time to share some of those challenges.
Cheryl, are you prepared to say something, or Deb Malcolm?
Yeah, I'm here, Tony. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Madam Chair, I'd like to address, and Mr. Collins, your concern about the concern that you raised about the mental health and the transition back to school. Very, very valid point, and it's something that the elementary principals have discussed. Part of our plan that we presented includes a communication plan for teachers, families, and students. And our plan is to get as much information as we can out before the beginning of school, help children to understand through Google Meets and question and answer sessions how their day will look different, what the different protocols will be in their day, and give them an opportunity for a virtual orientation before we start. Similarly, giving parents the opportunity to ask questions, and we'll do a video presentation to share with them as well, looking at a virtual kindergarten orientation, as well as I know many of us do a principal's open house for new families, and we would again look at offering that in a virtual way before the beginning of the school year to alleviate some of the anxious feelings and concerns before we begin. And then once we do begin school, continuing with our PBIS protocols and looking at how we might have virtual assemblies so that we can hear children's concerns about protocols and address those in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you. Do you want, Mrs. Vaughn, do you want to share? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Collins, did you have a question? I wasn't looking up. Oh, do you want to share just kind of high level some of the challenges or the work that you've done to figure out how do you meet the CDC guidelines in an elementary school full time?
Sure. I'd like to give a shout out to my task force. They were phenomenal. And there was such great thinking around every issue. Every issue came up initially as, a concern, a problem, but quickly a lot of brainstorming and thinking outside of the box, and great flexibility on the part of the teaching staff. So some of the high level concerns naturally were looking at traffic flow within the building, looking at arrival and dismissal. How do we bring, a community close to 700 children in the building and keep them separate? And maintain social distancing, keep them safe, and how do we, when we're looking at those protocols, how do we staff that? Because staffing would look very, very different than it has in the past. So that was one of the bigger concerns. Another concern naturally is compliance with the cleaning protocols around the playground and the restroom. Making sure that every time a pod of children goes to use the restroom is then cleaned. When you're talking about a school that has 32 classrooms, that's a major challenge for us. Similarly with the playground, keeping classrooms separated, keeping those stable pods separated. We needed to create 5 play areas. that had suitable distance between them, but then were age appropriate as well. So that we were affording every child an opportunity to access different areas of the playground throughout the week. Another issue was the social distancing and spacing in the classroom, where we have gone, and I know that Mr. Mitchell has mentioned this before, we're going from a place where we have children sitting at desks, sitting at tables, collaborating and working together all day. Now we're moving them apart, and we're taking a step backwards in that sense, where we can figure out the table and desk situation. Naturally, the size of our room is fixed. So how do you adjust for the extra furniture that now needs to be in that classroom, and keep a safe classroom for the students? So those are some of the main points that we wrestled with at community.
And related to the classroom, so how many students are you able to fit in a pod with the distancing? And are you doing three feet distancing or 6 feet distancing?
Well, we were going with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and that's the 3 feet. Each classroom at community has their classrooms that now have an enrollment of 25 students.
Okay. And how are you handling lunches? Or would you handle lunches?
So that's a great question, because we do have a very small cafeteria, and the guidance says that we're limited in the number of students that can be down there. Each pod has to have a certain area, and then each pod has to be separated by 14 feet. So we're not able to fit 5 pods in my cafeteria. What we're able to fit in the cafeteria right now are those children that have peanut products. The rest of the children in each one of the plans would be eating in their classrooms.
Madam Chair, Deb Malcolm is on, and she could interject as well if you would like to hear from Cumberland Hill.
Yeah, that would be great.
Good evening, everyone. Cheryl, thank you so much. I think one of the things that we did, the 5 of us at the elementary level, is there are so many things that are consistent across all 5 schools, such as how we're setting up for breakfast and lunch. We're doing a grab and go for, a delivery system for breakfast for kiddos, so that our Sodexo staff will be delivering lunches, and that's at every elementary level, every school. One of the challenges is our situation at Cumberland Hill is very unique from that of, say, community school. We have a large cafeteria. So I'm very fortunate that I can fit at least 1 grade level in the cafeteria with the 14 feet distancing among the set pods, as well as have an identified area for those children who are peanut or tree nut free or who need a peanut butter table, while the other cohort at that grade level some are eating in their classrooms. We also have such a large area outside that I'm able to have 6 classes have recess at one time, because I have 6 identified areas between the hard top, and we have an outdoor learning space and the soccer field. But one thing I really want to highlight is, and Cheryl really hit on everything on how we all went in. We set up individual classrooms to see what was manageable at each grade level for social distancing. But then the 5 of us also met to look at and brainstorm, how are we going to communicate plans with staff and families and students? How are we going to set up so it's consistent across the district with breakfast and lunch, and kind of share ideas for arrival and dismissal as well, so that at some level there was that consistency given the differences even among our individual buildings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. Yeah, no detail is too small. So I guess other members of the committee, do you have any questions about the 7 options or anything else related to the reopening plans? Okay, no,
Maybe,
all right,
maybe,
Mr. Mitchell?
maybe the public does.
Yeah, well, we have one more topic and then we'll go to public comments. Yeah, for sure.
I just,
Mitchell?
Madam Chair, I did have a chance to text the Rhode Island Department of Ed regarding the question that you had about, is it, who will actually make the decision
Yeah.
about the option that we implement
Yeah,
or the recommended option. And based on the response that I just received, the decision will be made by the Rhode Island Department of Health based on science and data.
okay, Mrs. Waters, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I don't really have any questions, but I just wanted to say that I did have a chance to read through the packet that was sent to RIDE, and I just want to say you guys did such a great job of being so thorough and detailed, and with all of these various scenarios that when RIDE does finally come back and tell us
Yeah,
what kind of scenario we'll be under, I think we'll be very well prepared to act quickly in that small amount of time that we'll have before school starts. So I just wanted to say thanks I know it wasn't easy and a lot of hours, so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
okay, so I think we will move on in our agenda, and the next item on our agenda is discussion of future topics, and then we will open it up for public comments. So, it's hard to imagine actually talking about anything else except this. But we did have some other items on our agenda, on our list previously. And these things I think are going to rise back up again. The 2020-2021 achievement budget, the budget, we'll be talking about that related to whichever reopening plan we need to implement. We had wanted to do a distance learning wrap up from 2020 from the spring and talk about what we've learned, and then moving forward into the fall. That was an area that we've discussed, the impact, the grading system impact on content areas, future school reviews, the achievement strategic plan. But I guess I would say in terms of priorities for the next few meetings, I would look to Mr. Demana and Mr. Mitchell around which areas are the ones that will be the most impactful for us to keep discussing as an achievement subcommittee in the coming
right now
months.
we're so hyper focused on making sure that we get this right, and with so many question marks surrounding our current circumstances. I meet with various assistant superintendents nearly on a weekly level in the Northern Corridor. And, it's interesting, the teaching and learning conversations are non-existent. The professional development conversations are non-existent across districts, from the standpoint that, everyone is really looking at these systems to make sure that we can launch appropriately. And different districts are in different places in terms of launching curriculum. And for us, feel like we're in a good place with a lot of that, but we haven't had the opportunity, as we do under normal circumstances, to spend a summer planning our teaching and learning focus. It's been non-existent, and that's about as transparent as I can be.
Is survival one of the choices?
Yes, right, I know.
Even when we talk about budget related to academics, and I have some serious concerns about, Bob had to cut 30 some odd positions just to balance the original budget. And, there weren't any real academic pieces that we were adding other than what I was, getting into grants, federal grants. So I have concerns, especially around reading specialists, major concerns.
Yeah.
So we can talk about topics where we feel like we may be impacted the most moving forward, and the impact on the district in terms of how, my office sees sort of the big picture around this and what Cumberland can come to expect over the next few years based on what's happening. And Rachel should be a part of that conversation too, because it certainly will impact her and her team. So I think that may be the easiest sort of transition that's kind of in line with what we're doing right now, is just kind of connecting the dots and saying, all right, how is this impacting this from a realistic perspective?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
August 17th is a Monday, the day Ride's supposed to make their decision, I suppose. The 18th is a Tuesday. Would you want to meet then? Maybe as the picture becomes clearer?
I'm fine with that.
I'm asking you, Mrs. Friedman,
Oh,
as a chair.
Yeah. I think,
And Mrs. Waters as well, I'm sorry.
yeah, I think if Mr. Damana and the administration is prepared to go into more detail at that time, yeah, I think it would make sense for sure. So we can talk about that, Mr. Damana, as it gets closer.
Yeah.
We are going to get the feedback from RIDE, by the end of the month. So we will have something to work with. It is just, and maybe they'll end up moving, well, it'd be nice if they moved that date up from August 17th.
From a logistics standpoint, the next step, once we get the feedback and we make whatever corrections, ultimately the district is going to decide what direction it's going to go in, right? So at that point, if there's any 50-50 schedules, AB schedules in the district, now the next step is parents are going to want to know, okay, so what does your 50-50 schedule look like, Jay?
Yeah. What
does it look like, Beth? What does it look like, Adolfo? So that would probably lend itself to be, again, maybe the next step for achievement is have them discuss it through that arena.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. So let's tentatively say we'll do that on August 18th, but we will revisit that the week before to see, is it the 18th or is it the week after? But I mean, I guess there's not a lot of time. You only have 2 weeks before school starts once you find out from RIDE. So it would probably have to be the 18th.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. And to echo what Mrs. Waters said, yeah, a tremendous amount of work. And I know that, some parents, almost all parents, including us, are anxious and we worry and we're stressed out and we don't know what is going to happen next. And unfortunately, right now, nobody knows what's going to happen next. But the best we can do is, communicate as much as we know at the time, but with everybody, just like Mrs. Vaughn said, approaching this with flexibility and creativity and openness as families, as parents, as staff. It's all we can, as students, it's all we can ask for right now. So we can move to public comments right now. And Mr. Chandler is monitoring this. So I think if somebody wants to speak, you can, make it known through Zoom. Or if I think everybody's on Zoom. I don't know that anybody is dialed in.
We have one person that did dial in. So if you have any comments, you can raise your hand. If you're on the phone and you'd like to make a comment, you can use *9. I don't see anybody. Oh, I got one now. Hold on one sec.
Hi, this is Maria Lees, parent of my daughter who goes to Garvin Memorial. And I was just curious if there's been, well, let me take a step back and wanted to thank everyone for all their hard work. I know did a tremendous amount of work putting all these plans together. And I think I stand with a lot of people who sincerely appreciate that. So thank you for that. So my question is, around before and after care, and if any thought has been put into that. I know that's kind of an afterthought at this point, but I'd like to hear if any thought has gone into that.
Okay. All right.
I can respond to that.
Yep.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. And to answer your question, we are meeting with Alpha Best on a weekly basis. In fact, we meet every Tuesday. I know that, and we have the elementary principals here too. I know that a meeting has been scheduled with each one of those. And we know that, there is a need for this opportunity for parents both before and after school. So the expectation is that when school starts, that there will be this opportunity available to parents so that their children can have before and after school care if families need it. So I know that a number of parents have already expressed interest in continuing, or they have signed up for the first time, but there is quite a bit of interest. So we're working on it. The plan is for us to continue providing that opportunity. And I know that meetings have been scheduled with each of the principals. Does that answer your question, Ms. Lees?
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, I will say that normally in public comments, we don't respond to questions, but we will respond as we can. No, that's okay. No, I think it's very valid right now.
We can respond. We're just not obligated to respond. Isn't that correct?
Okay.
So we can choose to respond if we choose to do so.
Okay.
There's no.
Okay, good.
Depends on the question.
Yeah.
I'll answer all the questions I agree with. Absolutely.
Have Michelle McIntosh.
And also, when you introduce yourself, can you also give your address for the minutes, please?
She's on mute.
Yeah, whoever speaking's on mute.
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Okay. Michelle McIntosh, 119 Sleepy Hollow Drive, Cumberland, Rhode Island. I'm also a teacher at Cumberland High School, for those of you who don't know. I just have 3 quick questions, and I know you're not obligated to answer them, but firstly, I was wondering what the school department's stance is on the requirement of students wearing masks in the classroom. Also, the cleaning and sanitizing of classroom spaces. What will that look like for teachers during the day and in the evening, maybe for our custodial staff? And also regarding air quality, my classroom is on the 3rd floor. My windows open out about 5 inches. I have 2 windows with no air conditioning, and I'm sure we're not going to be able to use fans. So I was just wondering if anybody could comment on those items. And thank you all so much for your hard work. I know you've been working so hard this summer, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bob, do you want to do the masks?
Sure. I mean, I can respond very quickly to all 3 of those things and more information to follow. The expectation is that we're following CDC guidelines and Rhode Island Department of Health guidelines, and the information that is in the Q&A that has been distributed by RIDE has the answers to some of those questions. The expectation is that, given the high school, as you mentioned, Michelle, the expectation is that students need to wear masks if they cannot socially keep that 6-foot social distance guideline. So that's the answer to that question. The expectation is yes. Anyone within 6 feet has to be wearing a mask, including adults, by the way. The question about the cleaning, we have spent a lot of time on that, as you can imagine. One of the things that we know is going to cost us more money. We've had conversations about hiring additional staff to help us with cleaning. We have purchased, which we actually placed the order in April, and we're hoping to have these disinfectant spray guns. You may have already seen it at the high school, Michelle. We have one at the high school, but we know that we need another one. Every school will have this gun that sprays disinfectant. It doesn't only cover the surfaces of desktops and door handles and those kinds of things. It actually gets underneath the surface of the things that everybody touches. So that will be done on a regular basis, at least every day. Plus we have a cleaning protocol for each of the classrooms, and we can get into more detail as time moves on. And the other question was related to, we are also constantly having conversations around ventilation, because we know that that's an important topic. I believe that most of the schools, and I'm not sure about the high school, Alex is on the call and he would be able to help, but as you may or may not recall, several of the schools have new ventilators. So these it really is a good thing that we did that. So they are recently in most of the schools installed. We still have some work to do there, but I think in most cases we're in pretty good shape. And we're also having one of the companies that we do business with, E&E, is actually doing an audit of all of our classrooms and systems to make sure that the ventilation is where it needs to be. I don't know, Alex, is there anything that you would add to that?
No, I think you hit it pretty well. The high school, some locations are better than the others. The trans building isn't the best. It's the oldest. But that was that ventilation and that type of work is all built into the $83 million. It was too big a job to handle in the health and safety leases we did over the last couple of years. That would have took up the whole lease. So the plan was always to do the high school when we got the bond issue off the ground.
More information to come on those things. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think are on just about everybody's mind, Michelle. So thanks for bringing that up. We're going to have to spend more time digging into the answers to those questions.
Okay, thank you.
The procedures on cleaning they're linked in the plan as well. So they'll be transparent there as well.
Okay, it looks like we have one more person raising their hand.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
It's Ted Vecchio, 30 Martin Street, Cumberland, Rhode Island. Like everyone else said already, you guys have done an amazing job coming up with the plans. But as you all said, the assistant superintendent and the superintendent meets often with all of the other superintendents. Has it ever been considered to recommend that, where the governor has suggested we have in-person K through 5, but with these restrictions, it just might not be feasible when you consider the whole picture of before care, after care, busing, lunches, subs, everything that you guys have been talking about. Is it just RIDE is going to dictate what the issue is, and we have no choice but to do what they want? Or is it something that the superintendents could get together and say, this really doesn't seem feasible what you're asking us to do?
Well, I can respond very quickly to that, Mrs. Friedman, if it's okay. Or
yep.
All right, just very quickly, Mr. Vecchio. Your points are well taken. We are hoping that the governor, certainly there are some concerns about the options that we are expected to be prepared to implement, and we're hoping that the governor will join a future meeting. I know that an attempt she's already been to a couple of our meetings, and I know an attempt is being made to have her attend a meeting sooner rather than later. To answer your question, I don't know that we can sort of rebel against whatever scenario we're expected to implement. But one of the things that we have heard over and over again is that a decision as to the scenario that we will be expected to implement statewide will be decided in collaboration between the governor, the Rhode Island Department of Ed, and the Rhode Island Department of Health. So those are three organizations, if you will be deciding, what they think is best for us to do. The biggest concern, as you know, is, getting all those elementary school students back. That's what we've been hearing over and over and over again. So it remains to be seen what will actually happen, but hopefully we'll get some answers sooner rather than later so that we can plan accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? Do you see anybody else, Mr. Chandler?
No, I did not.
Okay, all right, then thank you very much, everyone, for attending this meeting on a hot summer night. And, you know, we will give as much information as we can when we can give it and as we get it back from the state. So, and thank you to the administration and staff and everybody who has helped to get us as far along as we are now. So now we just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Only one of you can do it, by Mr.
Second.
Collins. No, a
Good job,
second
Heidi.
by Mr.
Second by-
Collins. Okay, all right, then the meeting is adjourned at 6:47. Thank you,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.